Bungie unveiled some massive Stasis Nerfs in their weekly news dump this week, and it could be what the PvP community has been waiting for. So on paper, these look like really significant changes, plus Bungie has bumped them up in the priority to deliver them much earlier than expected, with them being originally planned for Season 15. So today, I'm going to go through these Stasis changes in detail. I'd like to gather your thoughts on Stasis and PvP and see if you think these changes are going to be enough. Well, if you're new around here or find this useful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below for all the latest Destiny 2 content and turn on notifications by hitting that bell. Well, before we jump into the update from Bungie, let me know down in the comments what you think of Stasis in the current sandbox, in PvP and also in PvE2. Now, which game mode you mainly play, and does Stasis improve your Destiny experience or does it make it worse? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. Well, let's get on to the update from Bungie. So Bungie said on Thursday, the 27th of May, 2021. So hey all, it's Kevin from the gameplay team here. I wanted to take a second to talk to you all about Stasis and our vision for the Guardian versus Guardian combat and the road that gets us there. So first of all, let's chat about Stasis, our 4th damage type in Destiny and the newest to join the fold. We've heard a lot of feedback about Stasis since its launch alongside Beyond Light in Season 12. And we've been using that feedback to help shape the future of the damage type. It's clear the vision we had for crowd control in PvE is succeeding, and players are finding it both useful and fun. And we love how Stasis plays in PvE, and we want to preserve that experience, but we agree with many in the PvP community who say Stasis is too dominant in the Crucible for too little effort or skill required. Over the last few weeks, we've been open with you that we're taking this feedback to heart. We're working hard to reel in this new power. We adore the long legacy of Bungie PvP games, and we want PvP Combat Sandbox to live up to that adoration. And that means we want the Crucible to be as fun for as many players as possible, while also serving up those moments of skillful execution and incredible plays. You know, it's a tightrope to walk, and frankly we overcorrected during development when we considered whether Stasis would live up to Arc, Solar and Void. Stasis and crowd control are key components of the Destiny Combat Sandbox. They're not going anywhere, meaning it's up to us to ensure Stasis plays well across all activities, regardless of skill level. And what you'll find detailed in this TWAB is a series of changes we believe will more evenly position Stasis alongside Void, Solar and Arc subclasses as an equal option rather than a dominant one, while retaining what's fun about the ability set. So since Forsaken, we've been slowly creeping towards a Crucible where it feels like gunplay has taken a backseat to our sweet cosmic magical powers. We believe this is the wrong place for a Crucible to be, and we want to shift the balance more towards weapons. To us, the Crucible is best played when weapons and abilities have complementary usage in any given encounter. When we set out to define what our vision looked like for the future of Guardian versus Guardian combat, it boiled down to a few key pillars. So 1, weapons are the primary way players engage with combat. 2, non-super abilities accentuate or augment the combat, but should rarely solve an encounter by themselves. 3, abilities have clear strengths, weaknesses and counterplay. And finally 4, build crafting is rewarding within the moment-to-moment combat loop of Destiny. So behind the scenes we've been executing on these pillars by planning out a roadmap of patches that we believe will not only get Stasis to where it needs to be for PvP, but also sets up a shift to the PvP Combat Sandbox in a meaningful way more towards gunplay. So our first patch in this roadmap was released in March and was developed separately alongside Season 14. Unfortunately, due to the pieces already moving at the time, some changes were made that buffed Stasis and were not consistent with our goals. We're working hard to ensure that when we release a hotfix patch, that we can realign all those moving pieces to exist more cohesively. Please pardon our dust as we work to get fixes and new features out in a timely manner. Next, we have some details for next week's hotfix below. And as you're going to see, there's a lot of changes to go over here, and they're all focused on Stasis. This patch is something we moved up from Season 15 to help smooth over some of the pain points players have been feeling, and it is important to note here that shifting our focus like this comes at some considerable cost to the team, so it's unlikely a mid-season patch of this scope will become a regular occurrence. Once this patch is shipped, we'll be diving back into Season 15. We're planning to deliver another balance patch focused on updates to the light subclasses while continuing to iterate on Stasis. And the goal here is to address some key pieces of feedback and make more of the light subclasses viable across the game. After Season 15, things become a little bit more nebulous because we're still in early development. What I can talk about though are our areas of focus to help paint a picture of where we're headed. We're going to be looking at our ability regeneration rates and redesigning how ability energy economy works across the game, and our goal here is to keep the PvE experience largely similar to the state of the game today, but reduce how often abilities are used in Crucible. And after that, we'll take a long hard look at the Void, Solar and Arc subclasses to re-examine each subclass path and how they fit into the combat sandbox. And I know some of this feels like a tease, and I hope to speak to you all again in the future when we've got more to show. So like Joe mentioned in our Beyond Light Vidoc, Destiny's best days are still ahead of us. I truly believe that, and our love for the game burns bright. And I hope what's spoken about here speaks to that and inspires you all to feel the same way I feel inspired about when thinking about the future. With that, I'm going to hand over to the gameplay designer Eric Smith to talk you through the upcoming balance patch. So Eric goes on to say, "Hey Guardians, so the combat gameplay team is currently working on changes to Stasis gameplay abilities aimed at improving the Stasis experience in Crucible. We had originally planned to ship these changes in Season 15 alongside a larger subclass balance patch, but we decided to move several of the Stasis gameplay changes up to hotfix 3.2.0.3, which is planned to go live on Thursday, June the 3rd, and we're still hard at work on additional subclass ability changes that will launch in Season 15 and 16, but wanted to get these Stasis changes into players' hands sooner rather than later. Without further ado, here are the changes. So we've got General Stasis, so Stasis Freeze, reduce the duration of all non-super freezes versus players to 1.35 seconds. Note, the freeze is too short to break out, so breaking out is now only possible when frozen by a super, and reduce special weapon, heavy weapon, and light ability bonus damage versus frozen players from 50% to 5%. We've got Stasis Slow, so no longer reduces weapon accuracy, now increases weapon flinch when under fire, and no longer suppresses class ability and air moves, e.g. Icarus Dash, and known issue, the Stormcaller's Ionic Blink is still suppressed when slowed. We plan to address this in a future release. And reduce movement speed penalty while slowed by 20%. Then we got the Whisper of Hedron's Fragment, so no longer increases weapon damage after freezing, and now increases weapon stability, weapon aim assist, mobility, resilience, and recovery after freezing. We got the Whisper of Rhyme Fragment, so no longer provides an overshield while on the super, and a Cold Snap Grenade, so Seeker no longer tracks target after initial acquisition, increased arming duration before Seeker spawns from 0.3 to 0.8 seconds, and reduced detonation radius versus players from 3 meters to 1.5 meters, and now bounce off walls and detonates on the ground. So next we got the Titan Behemoth, so looking at recent gameplay data, the Behemoth generally has the highest win rate of any subclass in most 6v6 game modes, and is also among the strongest in 3v3 modes. In Trials of Osiris matches, for example, only Top Tree Dawnblade has a higher win rate. We've taken these strengths into account while balancing the Behemoth's abilities. Between Shiver Strike and Cryoclasm, the Behemoth has incredibly high mobility, making targeting the Behemoth frustrating for controller players in particular. We've taken steps to make the Behemoth more targeted while moving, which should hopefully help alleviate some of the frustration. So we've got Shiver Strike, reduce flight speed and distance, reduce knockback versus players, and remove slow detonation on player impact. With Cryoclasm, now requires the Titan to sprint for 1.25 seconds before activation when not in a super, and also remove the cooldown. Next we got Howl of the Storm, so reduced angle of initial freezing and the damage cone, and reduce the crystal creation of freezing radius. Slow down sequence and crystal formation, allowing victims more opportunity to escape, and now spawns a small crystal on walls if performed into walls. So with Glacial Quake, we've got reduced heavy slam vertical freeze range versus players, and reduced damage resistance from 50% to 47%. Next up, we got the Hunter Revenant. So the Revenant's Crucible win rate, kills per minute at average efficiently, is generally within the top 6 of all subclass trees, and its usage rate is incredibly high. So in Trials of Osiris matches, it has the 5th highest win rate of any subclass tree, and is used by a whopping 36% of all Trials players. This is high usage, meaning players fall victim to its abilities more often, multiplying the frustration of being slowed by Withering Blade and Winter's Shroud. And we hope the changes being made to being slowed, paired with the adjustments of the Revenant's abilities, make this experience better. So we've got Withering Blade, reduce slow duration versus players from 2.5 to 1.5 seconds, reduce Whisper of Durance, slow duration extension versus players from 2 seconds to 0.5 seconds, reduced damage versus players from 65 to 45 after one bounce reduced further to 30, and reduced projectile speed by 10%, and reduced tracking after bouncing off a wall. With Winter's Shroud we got reduced slow duration versus players from 2.5 to 1.5 seconds, and reduced Whisper of Durance slow duration extension versus players from 2 seconds to 0.5 seconds. And finally, with Touch of Winter, Cold Snap Seeker no longer has increased movement speed or travel distance, and Cold Snap Seeker now spawns a small stasis crystal on detonation. So finally we got the Warlock Shadebinder, and the Shadebinder's Crucible performance is generally within the top 10 of all subclass trees. In Trials of Osiris matches as the 9th highest win rate of all subclass trees, and by the way I'm pulling this data from the weekend of the 14th of May 2021, but generally doesn't deviate much between weekends. While the Shadebinder may not be the most powerful in combat play, being frozen by its abilities takes a large emotional toll on the victim. We've adjusted Penumbral Blast to require more accuracy versus players in order to turn this ability into more of a skill shot given its powerful effects. So we got Penumbral Blast, reduced tracking and proximity detonation size and tracking versus players, and reduced freeze radius versus players when impacting the environment from 2.7 meters to 1.5 meters. We got Ice Flare Bolts, so Seeker now only chains once when spawned from a player's shatter, and Winter's Wrath, freezing projectile tracking strength, now ramps down to 0 after 2 seconds of flight. So we hope these changes have a positive impact on your Crucible experience, and while the gameplay team is very busy working on future releases, Crucible and the PvP community are incredibly important to us, and we continue to monitor the gameplay data and the community feedback regarding Stasis and subclass abilities in general. We'll continue to update Stasis until its win rates and usage rates are in line with the light subclasses, so expect more updates in the future. So loads of changes there to get your head wrapped around. Let me know down in the comments what you think of the changes. Really looking forward to jumping back into Crucible on a more regular occasion. Stasis just really dominates things, and to be quite frank, it's just really annoying. Well, that is it for this look at the Stasis nerfs in Destiny 2, and as always, thank you so much for watching. For more Destiny 2 content like this, hit that subscribe button down below and subscribe to This Week in Video Games. If you want to join the community, check out the Discord link in the description, or you can follow me on Twitter at TWIVGPodcast. If you enjoyed this video, found it useful, liking and sharing the video would really help me out. Otherwise, check out the other videos on the channel. Thanks again. I'll see you in the Crucible.